Welcome to Barba IQ. Let Lumio fire up the instruction.
Welcome to our Ready, Set, Smart Summer Refresh event, where we are providing fun, fresh PD opportunities highlighting how Lumio can provide a fluid workflow that benefits teachers and students. We will show you how to create lessons and activities focused on classroom instructional strategies. My name is Emily Ero, and I am an instructional design specialist from Orlando, Florida. This webinar, Barbie IQ, Let Lumio Fire Up the IQ Instruction, features myself and Kat Degar, professional development specialist from South Carolina. We encourage participation, and Anshu and Terry are in the chat to help answer your questions. We will either integrate them into the flow or hold them to be answered at the end during our Q&A period. We will be sharing resources from today's webinar in the chat, and also for participating today, our certificate will be provided after you complete a brief survey. At this point, I'm going to turn things over to Kat so that we can dive into today's webinar, Barbie IQ, Let Lumio Fire Up the IQ Instruction.
Thank you, Emily. So as she said, today we are looking at how Lumio can fire up your IQ instruction. So our goal today is to start looking at the benefits of kind of combining Lumio with the Smart Board. Then we're going to do a little build in Lumio based on kind of what we go through today. And then we are going to reflect on ways that you can really enhance and fire up your instruction with both Lumio and the Smart Board. So to get us started, we're going to do a quick shout it out. If you have not already joined us, make sure to come to hellosmart.com. You're going to join as a guest 199109. That's in the chat as well. And to get us started, what do you love about Lumio? What do you love about IQ or the Smart Board? We got a few people joining. Wonderful. Oh, no need to install. Perfect. Updated and modern features. Yes, how easy it is to write on the board in front of students. Oh, we've got great answers coming in. Game-based activities, vocab tasks, easy to make new lessons. So again, if you are joining us, our class code is 199109 at hellosmart.com. Let's dive into our Lumio side, right? The software side. No need to install, updated and modern features. We've got game-based activities. We're going to look at a couple of those today. It's a great platform to use for lesson plans, absolutely. It encourages student learning through interactive. Google integration, yes. Saves in the cloud, and we're going to look at that again today too. Interactivity, we can add audio, easy to make new lessons, games. I love the game. Collaboration, yes, all of those. And manipulative. So let's take a look at some of the board stuff. No PC needed, that's right, it's standalone. You don't need to connect to your computer or anything like that. It's easy to write on the board. You can sign in and save your favorites. We still have that interactivity feature. You want to look great. We're going to go over some stuff with IQ today, so we will be looking at that. Interaction on the board. You don't have to worry about projectors and alignment. Absolutely. Widgets, all the awesome things. Perfect. Well, thank you guys so much for getting us started on that. So as we look at Lumio, which is the software, and IQ, which is the board itself, why combine those? So a lot of you mentioned these in our shout it out. If you sign in, you can sync those Lumio files to come up directly on your display. Using Lumio is going to give you access to different items than what would be on the Smart Board. So you have access to those game-based activities, PhET simulations, the Desmos graphing calculator, and just so much more. You can launch your Lumio lessons from one tap with your display, which then gives you access to all of the whiteboard features as well. So, you know, being able to write on it, having that interactivity, you still have that with the board and Lumio. And then lastly, you can save your created IQ files So when you make a whiteboard file on here, it's also going to show up in your Lumio library so that you can edit it. So all those are great reasons why you might combine these two. So when we talk about combining them, you want to make sure that your settings are correct in order to get full access to your Lumio library. So when you're on your board, you have that little settings button in the bottom left, and you would click on that and then go into your files library and make sure that your default whiteboard location is going to Lumio. And when you do that, that's going to kind of bring everything together so that you have access on the board and you have access to your board files in Lumio. All right, so we are going to kind of switch to the board and have a look at what this might look like in the classroom. Before we get started, Terry, do we have any questions in the chat that I can answer?
So far, we're doing good. Keep going.
All right, perfect. Okay, so I'm going to switch over here. You'll see that I have my Lumio lesson right up here that I can click on the smartboard, open it up.
Kat, I think you need to stop screen sharing from Lumio so
Oh,
we can see you.
There we go. Everybody see my screen?
Can see it now.
Perfect. So we had just talked about that settings button. You'll notice on the left-hand side, I have all those whiteboard features. So I have my pen. So if I wanted to kind of highlight the files library, then you go to default whiteboard location, I can do that here. But let's dive into what a lesson might look like. So for our example today, we are looking at math, multiplication. What is an array? So I've got my definition up here for students. And again, with my whiteboard features, I can pick up a pen, I can circle vocabulary. We could talk about how rows are horizontal, columns are vertical. I could switch and use a highlighter if I wanted to. There we go. That we're highlighting the words that we want to. I've got all the whiteboard features on my Lumio lesson now. So now we're going to look at a label reveal. Okay, this is one of those game-based activities that you would have in Lumio. And the nice thing about this is if students are connected, then they have access to this where they can go through it on their own. However, I might use this as kind of good for note-taking, and label reveal allows you to label different items on this image. So an array by columns with a definition. We've got column, equal groups. What is an equal group? Oh, each row or column has the same number of objects. Emily, how might you use this in the classroom?
I'm going to pause you for a minute. And Kat, can you start sharing from the board? Perfect. Thank you. Now you should all be able to see if you've logged into her class, the exact same thing starting on your Hello Smart.
All right, it should be coming up. Does that work?
It's good. You're good.
Okay. So Emily, some other ways be that we could use this in the classroom.
I love label reveal because it's one of those activities that's great for note taking. It's great for reviewing. It's also great for previewing content, especially if you're maybe doing a lesson that's a science lesson and you're getting ready to get into something with science structures. Great for vocabulary review. And anyone who just is really like that visual learner, but you can put the definition with the label. So it's just such a great activity for all of those different areas of what we use in the classroom.
So I may have introduced what an array is and kind of all the definitions using a label reveal game from Lumio. And now we're going to take a look at another item that you can pull in from Lumio, which is a PhET simulation. So on your screen, if you want to kind of try it out, you are going to click on multiply, which is going to be the first box on your left. And then you can kind of pick which level you're doing. And for those of you who are not familiar with PhET, It's a free resource that was developed by the University of Colorado at Boulder. And this website has simulations for many math and science topics that are really good for kind of hands-on activities, if you will. So I'm gonna pick the second one. And it also has teacher resources and activities. So it's a really great integration to have between PhET and Lumio. I'm gonna give you guys a minute to kind of try it out, but I've got my array, my multiplication table here. And as I try it, it tells me whether I'm right or wrong. If I miss it, it's gonna give me a little frowny face. Have me try it again. Maybe this time. So you can tell kids that they need to get a score of 10 or whatever you want it to do so that they could try this in the classroom. You also notice it's got options for factor and division. But this is kind of the medium level. We can always go back and do a harder level. If I wanted to maybe try the really challenging level, I've got 11 times 10. So as kids advance, it has more options for them here. And when we do our build, we will look at how to pull this in through Lumio so that you can add this into your lesson. Now, maybe after we finish this, students had a question. And so the nice thing about bringing your Lumio lesson into the board is I still have all those features of the whiteboard. So I'm going to add a page, I'm going to add just the whiteboard by pressing that button down on the left. And I could add, a graphic organizer, I could add a manipulative, but I'm actually going to add a whiteboard because maybe some of my students had questions. And so now I can immediately address their questions. And we can do this all together in the class, pause the lesson and have a conversation about whatever questions they may have. So maybe, they don't understand an array. Well, 5 times 2, okay, well, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We have it twice. There's my array. And how many would I have? I have a total of 10. So 5 times 2 is 10. So very quickly, I can add in that whiteboard feature and address any questions that students have. Do we have any questions so far that I can answer?
So far, we're doing great. I did put the link to PhET if anybody's interested in the chat. There's great math and science for all grade levels in there. This is just one of them. And someone did ask about putting it in their, typing in the number in their target language. Right now, I believe PhET is only in English, but that's PhET, but I would have to look that up. But if you go to the website, it will also tell you that.
Thank you, Terry. So now that we've answered questions and kids have used that example maybe as a hook or maybe as kind of, activating prior knowledge, now I want to do a quick formative assessment. So this is using another one of the game-based activities called Match 'em Up. And there are several different interactive game types that we have to choose from. And we'll take a peek at that when we go into Lumio. But this is a great way to check for understanding in an engaging way. You'll notice that up in the top left and top right, the categories I've chosen are using that academic vocabulary. So we're reinforcing those terms again with kids. And then now they can drag 7 times 4. They can check their answers. Oh, not 36. So they can do a quick little formative check for understanding. I see I taught high school and my kids absolutely love this. We did it for science and you can match vocabulary terms. You could, just use it for a variety of ways. So it's a really great way to engage students. All right, let's do a couple more here. Let's see, I've got 8 and 1, and I know that's 8. And again, the goal is to get all of them matched up to check for understanding. Okay, so now that students have done this, maybe I kind of want to check individually where they're at. I've created an exit ticket. I want them to pretend that their friend was absent today. I put an array in this page and I want them to explain to their friend what they've learned about using arrays for multiplication. Now, right now, this is just a handout, just a page where I could write on it and we could do this whole class. But I really want to see what each kid knows. So by clicking on our People Manager up in the top left, I now have the option to either make it an individual handout, a group workspace, or a whole class whiteboard. So I'm going to go ahead and make it an individual handout so that every person gets their own copy. Okay. And then we're going to go ahead and check some student progress. Now, the nice thing when you're doing this on the whiteboard, and you've also got it synced to Lumio, is that I can go into my Lumio account later on my laptop or on my desktop and look at student responses and give feedback. I can also do that here as well. So we'll load it just a second. With 40 people, it's taken just a minute to kind of get everybody their own handout.
Hey, Kat, can you hit the gear?
Can I do what?
Hit the gear, the settings on the left center. Yeah, hit start. There you go.
Sorry.
Nope, all yours. You're good. We can see it on your side. And while you're looking at them, somebody asked how they could see the student's formative assessment. So this is it right here where she can see it. Go ahead, Kat, take it away.
So I'm going to pick, T-Bot just said that they were done. So I'm going to choose you. I'm going to click on that button and it's going to pull up what that person has done.
And just as a reminder, everything that you're looking at today was built in Lumio and is being run from Kat's display. So everything that we build in Lumio is being pulled over for that whole class interactivity.
Yeah. All right, let's see if Trish has written anything. Okay, so we got a dot, which is great. But I, as a teacher, can come in and say, great job. I can get feedback. And this is going to go on Trisha's. So I can see everybody, if I see that students are struggling or maybe not understanding, I have this option in the bottom right that says teacher handout. And so I can click that teacher handout and model for students on my own. How would you explain? So, maybe I would circle my 6 stars and my 6 stars. To model what I would want kids to do. So this is a great way to make it interactive for all students in the class. Okay. Any other questions before we switch back and do a build in Lumio?
I think we're good, Kat. As you do the build, just make sure you show all 3 types, how you can change a page into individual handout, group workspace, collaborative workspace, homework work, whiteboard, sorry.
Okay, let me end this. All right. Here's screen. Okay. Can everyone see my Lumio screen?
No, we're seeing your notes right now, Kat.
Okay, let's try that again. See now?
Yep, now we can see it.
Perfect. So for those of you who have not been in Lumio recently, it did change just a little bit. So prior to July 1, we had add activities. So that's going to be where we go to start our build. So we are going to click new. And you'll see that we have all these options for you to import and start a lesson. So you can import resources. You could pull in like a PDF. You could pull in a Google slide, a PowerPoint, a notebook file, anything that you want that you've already made. Again, that YouTube, the Desmos or FET, which will actually go into FET in just a minute. We've got those game-based activities, graphic organizers, all sorts of things. But to start for us, we are going to go to game-based activities. So if you want to follow along, okay, if you want to build along with us, you can go to lumio and sign in using either Google or Microsoft. Okay, so if you want to build along with us, lumio. And you can sign in with Google or Microsoft. If you've never been on, it may ask you a couple questions, okay? We are gonna go into game-based activities. And as you see, there are a bunch to choose from. we used that label and reveal earlier. So that's going to be the one that we start with. So I'm going to, if I wasn't sure what this was, I could click on this little training hat and it's going to tell me a little bit about label reveal and how I can use it. But I'm going to select this activity. Now, the cool thing with label reveal is you get to choose your own image. So if I had one on my desktop, I could drag it in here, or I can use our safe search to find something that works for me. So we're going to switch from math to science because I was a science teacher, and we're going to look for a cell. And I get bunches of options, but I'm going to choose this one. And if I click on it, it kind of shows me a little preview. And then I'm going to hit OK, and this pops in. Now for label reveal, you have up to 10 labels, and you kind of click on what you want to label. So I'm going to start with the very center and do a nucleolus. Now when I click on it, it makes that text box right there, but I can actually drag this kind of out of the way so that it's not right on top of the image. And I'm going to nucleolus. So I'm going to put in my title, the item that this is, and then if I click this little drop down, I can now enter notes about this. So you saw it on the label reveal where it got the plus sign and a little note definition part popped down. So I can enter anything that I want here. I don't have to, but I am. So this is going to produce and assemble the cells ribosomes. Okay, and then maybe I'm going to make a label for the actual nucleus.
And while she's creating the labels, there are so many options for using label reveal, such as like historical figures, political cartoons, science, math labeling problems, ELA. How would you use label reveal in your classrooms? How have you used it? Can you share in the chat?
Now, Emily, you mentioned those political cartoons. I think those are such a great way to use label reveal because you can really kind of dive into what that cartoon is looking at.
Right.
And kind of more details. So that is an awesome way to use it. Let's see. So this contains.
Ooh, that's a good one. Someone in the chat said features of graphs. That's a great idea.
I like that. So
A
I just put
proportion
in,
problem.
and once I'm done, I just hit finish, and it's going to add this activity. So it's very simple to kind of create your game, label it all, have those little notes so that students have this information. And I can preview it. And you'll see that I can click on my little question mark. Great way for kids to review this vocabulary. Hit the plus, they can check their knowledge of, well, this produces and assembles the cells ribosomes. All right, so now that we've done that, we are going to look at bringing an effect, okay? So I can click on this blue button down in the bottom left, and again, that add content big box comes up with all these options. And when I'm pulling in a FET or a YouTuber Desmos, these are all great ways for hooks, activating prior knowledge, reviewing, whatever it may be. But I'm going to click on FET, and it's going to pull up a bunch of different options for my simulations. So I can search for what I'm interested in. I can also filter by math or science or grade level. But I'm going to look for energy. That's another science topic that I really enjoy. So there's several options in here. I'm going to look at Energy Skate Park Basics. And again, it's going to bring up a preview for me. I can see it. Let's try the intro. And I can see what the simulation looks like. So I can drop my little skateboarder, watch him go. I can change his mass to see how that affects my speed. Okay. Maybe I want to see what it's like when I add friction. And I say, okay, this is one that I really like. So I'm going to save this to my lesson. So adding a FET is as simple as hitting that plus button, finding one that you like, and then adding it to your lesson. And then all kids have this on their devices if they're connected to their devices. or you can model it full class on the whiteboard.
And it's just as easy to add in one of those YouTube videos or one of those Desmo's graphing calculator that you saw earlier. Same process, just as easy.
Thank you, Emily. So then we also looked at doing a handout. We have that exit ticket. So I'm going to press that button down at the bottom again. I'm going to come in, and again, I have all these ready-made resources down at the bottom. That handout in particular, being an exit ticket, was under questioning and reflection. So if you want to follow along with me, you can click on this. I've got some kind of pre-made shouted outs. I've got some of those response activities, but then I've got all of these exit tickets down here. And what I really love about this is these are all editable. And so I'll use this one down here. So I can click on it, it's going to come into my lesson, but I can come in and edit that activity. So if I don't like the exact wording, or if I want to make it more content specific, all I have to do is hit edit. And it's going to say, do you want to edit this activity? Yes. So pretend your friend was absent today. How would you explain what you have learned? Well, I want to tweak that a little bit. And you'll notice when I first click on it that it's locked. And the reason that this is locked down is that this may be text that you don't want students moving around, but you can edit it simply by clicking on it and unlocking it. And now this text box is available for editing. So how would you explain what you have learned? And I think we said about using arrays for multiplication. So this is here. And then I want to add in that array that I had. So up in the top, I could add more text if I wanted by clicking the capital A and clicking in my handout, or I can come up and add up here. I have shapes that I can add. I can add lines. I could pull in an image if I wanted to. But we are going to pull in a shape. Let's do a triangle. So I double click my triangle. It pops into my handout. I can then manipulate the size. I can move where it is. I can rotate it. I have the options to change color. I'm going to make this a blue triangle. And then I can duplicate it. So I can either come up here and duplicate it. I can use Control-C, any of those kind of little I'm going to make several triangles to make my array. All right, we're going to make a 4x2. And then because I want to offer clear instructions for my students, I'm going to make audio instructions to go along with this. So up in the top right, you have somebody that looks like they're speaking. And I can do this for any page in my lesson, up to 5 minutes. So I'm going to click on that, and I'm going to record instructions for my students. Pretend your friend was absent today. How would you explain what you have learned about using arrays for multiplication using the triangles above? And then I add it, and it is automatically in my lesson, so students would then see that on their side. The other thing when you're in this handout is we can make this an individual handout where every student gets their own copy. We can make this a group workspace or a whole class option by clicking this magic wand. So I'm going to click on this magic wand up here. And again, you'll see those 3 options to convert it to an individual handout, a group workspace, or a whole class whiteboard. So you can really determine the amount of collaboration you want students to have on this. Terry, any questions before we look at a shout it out?
Not questions per se, and I just answered it, but I want the whole group to hear it. Is not only can you add the instructional audio, you can also, when you're in your Lumio homepage, you can turn on Immersive Reader that your kids can actually click on what Kat has there in green, or actually in white on the green part, and it will read those out loud. And somebody mentioned ELL kids. It will also read in other languages. I don't know exactly how many languages there, but there's a bunch inside Immersive Reader.
Something like that is a bunch. Yeah, that's a great feature. Okay, the last thing we're going to look at in our build, because we had this prior in our lesson when we first came into the webinar is a shout it out. Now you can add a shout it out to the whiteboard just by coming on here and clicking shout it out. But there are some differences between the shout it out on a whiteboard and the shout it out within a Lumio lesson. So I do want to kind of highlight those. So again, at that bottom left, we're going to click on that and we have this shout it out. The cool thing in Lumio is that you have the options for either a randomized one or for categories. So I'm going to make it a categories based shout it out. And I'm going to ask my students, what are some examples of a solid, liquid, and gas? Going back to our science examples. So under my categories, I can change this. I can have up to 4 categories if I want, but I have to have a minimum of 2. And then I can determine if I want my students to contribute using words, text, or if I want them to do images, and how many contributions they have. Knowing that I'm doing solid, liquid, and gas, when I click on next, I'm going to create a customized background so I can make it really content specific and relevant. So I'm going to click on custom, and you'll see my shout it out has divided into 3 sections. And I can click my little image up here. I can either pull something that I've saved on my desktop, or I can browse for one. So I'm going to look for a solid using my safe search. Well, this is perfect. All my molecules, great example. So I'm going to click on that and hit OK. Now, because we're dividing the screen into 3 parts, I have a smaller range for an image. And then I'm going to do my liquid in just a second. So maybe for liquid, I'm going to choose water because that's a well-known liquid. I think this is a great example. Okay. And then for gas, what's a good representation for gas, Emily? Can you think of one?
Helium?
Helium.
Balloons.
So maybe like a helium balloon.
Balloon.
Okay, so I can search for a balloon. Oh, a hot air balloon, even better. And use that as my background image for gas. So now when students go into the shout it out, each section is relevant to the topic that they're looking for. I hit finish and it's now ready to go. We talked earlier about the benefit of combining Lumio and IQ and how this lesson can now be put on your board. So I do want to take a second to show you that before we kind of answer all the questions. But Terry, I see there's a question.
Yeah, can you first title this before we lose what you're going to do?
I was about to do that. So this is going to be our science example.
And then can you go to your Lumio homepage? So under the edit class on the top right-hand corner, that's where you can turn on that immersive reader or not. So if she goes to manage immersive reader, she can turn it on for her class or off for her class. So now it's on. And then can you pull up that ready-made resource that we have in that file we just made? Hit start and then pull it up.
See, that was this one. Then we have our immersive reader right here.
And then this was, somebody asked the question on the right-hand side. So we're not going to dive into this deeply. We'll show you where there's resources, but that's where you can change it to a different language. You can speed it up. You can do whichever one you want, and it will do all of those things for you.
This is a great feature.
And then I think we've answered everything else that we need to right now, Kat, if you want to continue. Sorry about that.
Oh, you're good. Okay, so we are going to switch back to the board so that you can see how easy it is to pull in this lesson that we just made in on the board. Let me switch my camera really quick. Thank you for your patience. Okay, so we just made that file. So once you have synced your Lumio to your board, all you have to do is in the bottom, you'll see these 4 bubbles. I'm going to click on Files. And underneath my files, you'll see that I have that option for Lumio. And when my Lumio files come on, this is the example that we just made, this science example. But I also, you can see all of my files that I've had anytime recently. So these are all available. So I'm going to click on this and open it up. And now the lesson that we just made is up on my smart board and ready to interact. So that's a really great way to kind of combine these two. All right, as we are coming to the end, I do want to take a minute and go over a few resources that we have available for you. All right.
Kat, while you're doing that, there is a question about code for students. Can you show them the code again?
Yes. So your code is the same whether you are in Lumio on your computer or on the smart board. And when you click on this little person up in the top left, that's where your code is. So it will tell students to go to hellosmart.com. You will have that code. Mine is 199109. It would be the same on Lumio, or it's the same on the board. So that's not going to change. It will always be this unless I go in and change it.
And then yes, and then they'll be able to pull it up on their device. So they'll be able to see it on their front of room display as well as on their device.
Yeah, so if I start the session, anyone who's already logged in is going to now have access to this as we go through this lesson.
And once you have put the code in, once your students have visited and put the code in, your name, your classroom name should show up the next time at hellosmart.com.
Yes, it is a great thing to have. Like once they enter that in, it kind of saves to their device so that it's always there when they go to sign in. So on this screen, we have a ton of resources, and I know that this is going to get dropped in the chat as well. We have all these instructional resources under our training resources. If you want to join us for more webinars, you can click on that one. Our YouTube channel is amazing. It's got all these like 2 to 3 minute little snippets to just very quickly learn how to, if you want to add a FET, okay, how do you do that? Or if you want to add a handout and make it an individual handout, how do you do that? And then lastly, we have our ambassador community. You do not have to be an expert to join our ambassador community. We really encourage you to apply so that you can learn more and be a part of this larger community. So these are all fantastic resources for you to go to. The training resources have both IQ resources as well as Lumio resources. So if you have any questions about either one, you can find that there.
And I will put one more plug in because some of you asked questions about Lumio or the smart board. In those ready-made webinar or in the Ready Set Smart webinars at the very bottom of that page are all the ones we've done this current school year. So you can go back and watch stuff. So if this is the first time you've done Lumio, you might want to look at Lumio basics because we probably went a little fast during this webinar. Or if this is the first time you really used IQ because you're getting your new board this school year, then watch the IQ ones because there's stuff already pre-made for you.
And there's also the IQ modules in there that are super helpful if you're getting a new board to kind of walk you through the beginning steps. With all that said and done, we are so happy that you joined us today. I'm happy to answer any other questions. I know that Terry or Anshu is going to drop the survey link into the chat. But we have enjoyed our time today, and I'm happy to answer any last minute questions if you have them.
So we do have a question that says you do not have to register to watch the webinars.
Not the ones that are already pre-done. The ones, if you want to watch them live and ask questions, you definitely need to register. But for the ones that we already did this school year, they're all just there live for you to be able to go see.
And the summer refresh ones that have happened yesterday and today will be up there very soon. Any other questions?
Just as a quick reminder as well, because I know it was at the beginning of the webinar, when you're trying to sync Lumio to your display, remember to have your settings in that My Files Lumio, so that you can make sure that your Lumio files are showing up in your files library on your board.
Well, thank you everybody for joining us. We'll be on here for just another minute or two if you have any questions. Otherwise, thank you so much for joining us. Let's see, was this somebody's question about webinars? I'm going to share my screen really quickly just to show you what that looks like. So on this bit.ly Lumio refresh page, if you click on the webinars, it's going to open up into this page and go back to the top. And if you scroll all the way down, it's got our upcoming webinars that we just had this week. If you scroll all the way down to the bottom, these are all on demand. So you can watch these without registering. So our Lumio ones that we've done this past year, the notebook ones, or any of the IQ ones. Any other questions before we head out? Oh, Norma, I see your question. So the difference between Shout It Out in Lumio and Shout It Out on the board. In Lumio, that's where you can customize your background. You can add that question up top. So I will show you really quickly. When we add this Shout It Out, when I'm in Lumio, I can make it by category. So I can add those background images if I want, or I can have those 2 or 3 or 4 panels. I can add a question up at the top. There's a question. I can make my categories. If I click next, I can then add a custom background. When you're on the board, it's just going to go into this classic view, and you're not going to be able to type a question up top. You're just going to kind of verbally ask students the question, and then they would reply and shout it out. So just a little bit more customization on the Lumio side. Again, everybody, thank you for joining us. Hope you are full of ideas on how Lumio and IQ can work hand in hand to enhance student engagement, and we hope to see you in some upcoming webinars.